Most of us heard about the last-minute reshoots they had to do for episode 9. Well, reshoots aren't exactly anything new to any big movie, or small movie either. There were actually some major scenes that were added in last minute to episode 9, so I actually want to talk about those in this video.
Don't get too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
Warning, obviously there are spoilers for episode 9 in this video because I will be talking about scenes in episode 9. I feel like that would be obvious, but you would be really surprised because I also thought it was obvious how four-way stops work, and that seems to challenge a lot of people. So you've been warned. Okay, so Mary Ann Brandon, who is one of the editors who worked on episode 9, has been doing some interviews, and she talked about 3 scenes that they did for reshoots back in the summer of last year, 2019, months before episode 9 was supposed to come out, which worried some people, and I really wasn't that worried, but it was interesting, the 3 scenes that they decided, yeah, we need to shoot this and put this in the movie. So really quick, this is what Mary Ann Brandon had to say about the reshoots they did last summer. We added a couple scenes. We had 2 weeks back in London in July, and we added a couple of scenes and added some dialogue that we felt we needed. And there were a couple of very small emotional moments that JJ and I and Steven decided would benefit the film. And we went back and got those. Interestingly, if you heard this or maybe you watched some of my videos where I talked about this, there was a leak where episode 9 originally was going to open with Luke and Leia right after the Return of the Jedi training together, which we saw as a flashback, but that happened much later in the movie. Originally, that's how episode 9 was going to be opening, but then they changed it, and JJ's whole reasoning about what happened with the first act is they actually did a lot of shuffling around because how they wanted to open the movie was really hard for them and they couldn't figure it out. So if you saw those leaks, you watched some of those videos, or you heard it somewhere else, and then you were shocked when they didn't open up with that flashback, it's just because they had to juggle around scenes to make things make sense. The scene I really don't like the most that was added in was the first scene between Poe and Rey where they're bickering. Poe goes, "What'd you do to my droid?" because Rey carelessly hurt BB-8 in her anger, and then Rey freaking out about the Falcon because I don't know if you know this or not. Apparently, Rey now has the Falcon. I thought it would have gone to Chewie or Lando, but I guess it's Rey. I don't know if they've changed that so far, but that's what we were told for a while. So originally that scene wasn't going to be in. I'm not really sure why they thought it worked, because if you read any of the canon that takes place between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, Poe and Rey actually get along really well. And in Poe's words, they're torture buddies because Kylo Ren tortured them both, and it's really adorable. And yeah, they're both kind of hot-headed, but I don't know, their relationship in the other canon, I feel like that scene where they're bickering and being little bitches to each other just wasn't necessary. But as I say often, work with bacteria. Not a movie making specialist. I am just a simple woman. I just can't understand the sophistication of movie making. Here's what Mary Ann said about the Poe-Rey scene. There was like a funny moment between Poe and Rey when he lands the Falcon and it's on fire. We wanted to have a more humorous exchange between them. Nothing major, no. Again, I really don't think that scene was necessary. I didn't like it. I'm surprised they found it to be humorous. I actually found it to be just pretty cliche and generic and blah, but, you know, whatever. Then actually, speaking of that, that's another scene that was added later on with the reshoot in the summer of 2019. So after Rey freaks out and decides to isolate herself on Ahch-To, just like Luke did, saying, yeah, the Jedi need to go, this needs to end, Luke appearing to her as a Force ghost was part of the reshoots. What the fuck? So this is what the editor for episode 9 had to say on that. The scene on the island with Luke when Luke sees Rey. The film kind of informed us, after it was together, what it needed to say, so we went back and got that dialogue. I will note that the editor didn't say whether all of that scene was shot or if they had to go back and change the dialogue around, because as they shuffled the movie around and edited out some things and added in other things, they needed to change the dialogue, or if they realized, oh shit, we need to actually have Force Ghost Luke here. Kind of pisses me off if it's they originally didn't have him at all, because then the only Force Ghost Luke originally they were going to have was the end of the film, and fuck you. I'm really hoping that it just was Luke was going to be a Force Ghost and they realized that the dialogue needed to be a tiny bit different for where they wanted the film to go. Crossing my fingers. And actually going back to the very first scene that we see Rey and Leia together. So we know we open the movie straight with Kylo going ape shit, and he's actually on Mustafar, just in case you didn't know that. There's a fun fact. Now you know, those of us that have the visual dictionary, because we have to keep giving Disney our money because, God, we love Star Wars. But after that, the first scene we get with Rey training and Leia being her master and helping her along, that actually was added too, which, again, goes back to originally that was not how they were going to open up the film. So this is what Marianne had to say about that reshoot. We shot Rey's introduction when she's up in the air and the rocks are spinning around her because we wanted to introduce Leia and her. I had to go back and find good shots of Leia that we hadn't used in The Force Awakens. And we had those, and it kind of made us think, oh, we could have this really fun scene to introduce Leia and Rey. So the film kind of informs you of things it might need. I still would have liked seeing the film open with the flashback to Luke and Leia training, but it's fine that that didn't happen. It is interesting that something completely different was going to be our first introduction to Leia and Rey in episode 9, and then they decided, oh shit, we need to add in this entire scene, so that's a bit unique. According to Marianne, that was the extent of the reshoots, but I think as time goes on, we're gonna get more and more information about the conflicts and what they had to do for episode 9. I know they delayed quite a bit. They delayed the art book and they delayed the novelization, which is something they usually don't do. Usually it happens pretty shortly after the film, so I think there's a lot that they're twisting or reworking or trying to smooth over. And as the years go on, we're gonna get more glimpses into that, especially as random people that worked on episode 9 and even the sequel trilogy begin to talk. And Marianne actually did some other interviews where she shared some pretty fascinating things, including that the kiss between Kylo and Rey, they didn't even know if they were going to include that, or Ben and Rey, excuse me. People are going to get upset for me calling him Kylo in that moment. So there was a lot of juggling done in this film and a lot of editing, and that's where you kind of maybe seen the release the JJ cut, because the film just got rearranged and things got ripped out and then put in, and then they went back to add completely different scenes. So the flow of this movie could be completely different if we got a different cut of it, or if we saw scenes that are going to be in the novelization actually put into the film with a JJ cut. Because if you are following the author for the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker, they're saying, yeah, there's a lot to put in this novelization, and there's actually things that were supposed to be in the film that weren't, but they will be in the novelization as canon. So when that comes out, and God, it's a few months away, I think. I believe it's still April or something. It's gonna be forever before that comes out. But I also have a feeling, and they have done this before, where they're going to use the novelization to smooth out some plot errors or plot holes and make some things make a bit more sense. And I understand that's the role novelization of Star Wars films. It's a role it's been filling for a while now, so I'm not really upset about that. I wish they'd do a better job of showing that in the films, but I also think, again, it's covering their asses when enough people point out a plot hole or error, and they're like, oh, no, it wasn't. See, in the novelization, it explains why it was like that. You're the dumb one.
Thanks so much for watching. Please like the video and subscribe for more Star Wars videos.